Oh boy. All right, fellas, we are live.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel Perez.
Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And today we are here jargoning about, again, got the conversation started about the Titan.
Ooh.
The Titan, which is a submarine, little makeshift. Almost looks makeshift, but I'm sure some decent technology was in there. But we'll get into that. What have you guys heard? What do you guys know? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, after looking at some of the reports, I think the fact that it imploded, I mean, that was at least one of the reports is that at that pressure, the submarine didn't quite handle the amount of pressure. At least it wasn't calculated to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It's just hard to imagine how that happened so quickly. And I've seen where you have these cans under pressure.
Like soda cans.
Yeah.
Yep. And you see how they implode, and it just happens so quick. Doesn't matter the size, thickness of that can. I've seen it happen with 100-gallon, those tanks that they put out there. They load it up with, they steam it, and they add ice, and that thing just goes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's that whole scientific method. I mean, that's how you shape metal. That's how they fabricate it, right?
Yeah.
They use a combination of heat and cold, and they're able to maneuver it accordingly. But I guess elephant in the room with this Titan is all the memes and all the kind of like and so I'd like to say my condolences to the family. I know there was a 19-year-old on there with his father, and yes, they're billionaires, and we kind of tend to resent, really rich people because they get to do things like buy a $250,000 ticket and go down and see the Titanic. But I don't think that's any reason to kind of make fun of their lives, right? Yeah. I think the company, seemingly credible. Here you have this sub that has been down there, has made, just over 10 trips on its own before, right? So it's not like it was, hey, I made this. Let's go see if it works, right? Yeah. It worked before, and it had a proven track record of being able to make that exploration. But now there's all these theories of like, okay, well, did the carbon fiber body was the integrity of that build compromised after so many trips down there? Things like that. So, but the memes themselves, I think, are just kind of mean. Really insensitive.
Yeah.
But I do think that, some of the things, it makes it hard not to kind of joke about the ship itself or the sub itself because of the technology they were using, right? So I wanted to ask you, Rohi, with robotics, I was actually surprised that, they controlled their robot with a gaming controller, right? And so did these guys. And so what do you think about that? I mean, were they wrong in that sense?
No. So, I mean, honestly, with the team, I remember when I came on, that was with the robotics. Like, they have the ability, you can actually make your own controller. Some teams do. They buy the buttons and they make these, makeshift, controllers. And when they asked me about it, I said, it just similar to what I saw in his one of his talks is that, here's a controller that's designed by these multi-billion-dollar companies, designed for abuse, designed for all this weird, bug checked and everything. Why? I mean, trust it instead of saying like, "Hey, I'm an engineer today, and I'm going to go fabricate this and find out I didn't solder this correctly, or I didn't do something correctly." And not to mention that it wasn't designed to be beat up.
Right.
And that's
I got to 3D print the
shell
and everything.
I mean,
right?
so I would agree with. I know everybody's kind of joking about it, but I would agree that I think that's the most solid plan to go with, is because it's designed to be abused. It's designed to work. It's been tested thoroughly. I think that was the right design.
I think the fact that people link that to like a PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah.
And obviously, when we're out there playing. When I'm playing the Xbox, I'm looking at my control wireless, and I'm able to move around and
it's intuitive.
This huge screen, and I'm able to do things that,
instantly, right?
Yeah,
it responds instantly.
And it's vibrating, it's responding to me. Back then, when Atari was there, I remember it was just one button, I think, on the left side, and you had a joystick, and you moved it around. But I mean, technology has certainly advanced. The fact that you can command. My question would be, at those depths, would signals be interfering at all because of the I'm assuming it's wireless, right? So when
Well,
you're
they're-
having to control
no,
the
they're
propellers
gonna be-
or the setting of the submarine where it goes, I'm not sure if any
It's
of that.
designed to be self-sufficient because
Yeah.
that's the thing is that when you're at those depths, you can't have wireless doesn't work. It's whatever they
Like
are
between the
attached.
sub and the
Yeah, they
the
do have a
mothership.
cable, but it's too far for anything of good communication. So to some degree, it's got to be self-sufficient, self-reliant. But the thing to ask would be, was there something, under a panic? Is there something that I opened a valve at the wrong time, or is there a button command that I hit that says, "Oh, hey, jettison this thing," and all of a sudden, it causes a pressure instability.
And typically, like planes, when they're starting to go down, they have this black box, and this is where a lot of the information is retrieved whenever they have an accident or some type of plane crash. They're able to see what malfunctions were taking place. I'm not sure if something like this happened to that sub, or at least if there was any communication. Again, at that depth, I don't know if there's any communication. I haven't really heard a lot of this story other than what everybody else knows is that, hey, this thing went down there. They found it. Maybe it was imploded, but I mean, it's hard to say.
I think those black boxes are relatively new, and in fact, Kobe Bryant's helicopter didn't even have a black box in it. So it's not every vessel or transportation vessel isn't obligated to have one, especially something so new where there's not really a commercial submarine tour regulation or anybody regulating that at this time. Probably will certainly change now going forward, but yeah, I did hear that there is a like almost like a coding that was sent between the ship up top and them. And of course there's all kinds of different stories coming through, but there was rumor that they might have sent there was communication saying that we're descending too quickly, and so that they were apparently trying to release some of their like sandbags, the weights that were attached to them, to try to slow them down. And so kind of a newer like theory may be, well, did it not implode based off the pressure, but did they crash and then implode because of upon crashing that they might have ruined the integrity of the structure, and one little crack and then boom, there you go. So that one was actually, when I read that, I actually thought, what, that kind of makes sense, or it would make sense, because they said it's a 2.5 hour descent. Right? It takes 2.5 hours to descend all the way down, and you're just dropping. And so the last communication they had was almost at like 2 hours, and that's when they were saying we're descending too fast. And so, so that's another theory was, okay, well, did they not expect to be at the ground already, and then boom, all of a sudden they hit, and then it was it imploded, right? So. Pretty interesting, but to your point about, a black box, I mean, I would imagine there's cameras everywhere, maybe sending a feed, but to Rohi's point, probably hard to get a feed up, right, through all of those depths, but just kind of a interesting situation in general, I think.
And being that I'm not a physicist, right, or in NASA, but I think that when ships or even rockets go up, they have some type of communication, and they have center control there, right, where they're controlling everything, every single. I don't know how this other vessel was prepared. Obviously, if you're getting these billionaires to come on in, you would think that there would be enough money there to at least have the technology to be able to get that information. And this will become a mystery moving forward. I mean, this is no different. I mean, you've seen NASA. Physicists, engineers, whenever that rocket that blew up with all those passengers that were in there going up there for the first time as well. So a Challenger happened in the 80s, and it was devastating to see that. I mean, here you prepare for all this. You're checking everything that's going through, making sure that everything's set. And even at that, with that engineering, with that precision, you're still going to have flaws that essentially you didn't really calculate for, because again, certain things happen, and you can't always calculate everything. We can try to perfect it and get to that, but I think in a case where this vessel, it may have been down 10 times, but like you said, it may have not been. It couldn't weather more than 10 times, and who knows, the theories that are coming about, like you said, maybe they were descending too fast, maybe they hit the ground first. But all that, I mean, we don't prepare for that. We can only anticipate. Let's prepare for as much as you can to try to avoid these devastating, catastrophic events, tragic events.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, you're fighting against
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature. You don't know what's out there. You don't know what's taking place. Was it too choppy down there? Was a lot of current? And
Well, there was several other tours that were scheduled throughout the year, but they had to cut them off because of bad weather. And you would think, how does bad weather up top affect something so low? But it does, right? The ocean reacts. So. One late night I was just kind of like going through just different links and just following different, this person said this person said that, and the guy who was testifying or giving his experience of, that's how we know it's a 2.5 hour descent. They're down there for about 10 hours, but he said it took them, or they're not down there for 10 hours, but total time is 10 hours, 5 hours once you're at the bottom, and then 2.5 hours back up, right? So, but he said it took them 3 hours once they got to the bottom, 3 hours to find the Titanic. And they were they were anticipated to be dropped down within 400 yards of it. But there's no instruments that can be used. I mean, you're literally just kind of walking in the dark with the flashlight, right? And you have a 400-yard parameter that you have to cover, and then boom, there they found it 3 hours later.
Wow.
And now you get to explore for a little bit, and then you go back up, right? So certainly, I when I heard about that, I thought, here we are in 2023, where we have so much technology at the palm of our hands, literally on our wrist, in our ears, on our eyes, coming soon, right? I mean, all that's already been there. Yet, when they actually discovered the Titanic, how much technology didn't exist, and how the heck did they get robots down there to find the thing in the first place? And we have all this footage and stuff. So kind of a testimony to how incredible that initial journey of the discovery of the Titanic in general was, right? Yeah. So I don't know. So I guess this poses the final question before we wrap up this topic is, would you guys, prior to this devastation, would you guys have been willing to get on that submarine and go explore it?
Well, honestly, if I had that money, I think I can use it elsewhere. I as it is, I'm not that much of a risk taker when it comes to like I guess even skydiving. I kind of think the skydiving or maybe climbing Mount Everest, for example, right? Only because I value my life a bit more, and I think I can use that money in a different capacity. But certainly, I can see that if I was in their shoes, my mind may steer differently, because now I said, well, I've seen it all, I've done it all. This is the last thing I want to do, and I'm going to go down there and check that out to see it for myself, and then I can say that I did it, right? But again, I'm not there. Yeah. I'm not there, right? So not that I won't be, but I'm not there now. So I couldn't say. I certainly not the way I seen it, not the way things are appearing on TV right now in this little cylinder type of tube, and as it is, I'm claustrophobic. So imagine just being in there with 4 other guys and just one button. I don't know to what extent, but I just not. That's not me.
Oh, you're right.
I'd look at it no different than like if there was a free trip on SpaceX, to go, go take a ride in space. Even though they have probably a 10-time or 100-fold budget, you have to assume that one of those rockets is going to fail. And I think it's the same thing, but even worse is, like you said, is that the 10th trip may have been good, but maybe the next one we got and the next one, And is it worth it? I mean, I don't have any desire to see that stuff. I don't really have a desire to go spend my entire life working just to see space for 5 seconds, or the bottom of the earth. I'll watch it on a video,
Yeah.
So no desire there.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that our cameras are of such high quality now that you can really take in the moment just on with the comfort of your couch on TV,
Apple
right?
VR that's coming, right?
Yeah,
It'll be like you're there.
No kidding, no kidding. Yeah, you could literally take a trip down there.
Yeah.
Let me use an analogy. If you're gonna, are you gonna say, would you do it? Let me ask you, would you do it?
I would have.
Okay, there you go. And I'm glad you answered that. But the analogy that I was gonna use for that is, think about going to Disneyland, right? And when you go to Disneyland, there's an excitement of being out there because your kids are gonna go out there. You're gonna experience Mickey Mouse and the whole thing. Once you're at Disneyland and you see the amount of people and you're standing in line and you're waiting to get on, I mean, for me, it's like, I have no desire to be there. I mean, honestly, I hate to say this, but okay, we came, we saw, let's get out of here now. And then that's kind of the feeling that I would have because, yes, within that confined space and that little window that I see, I don't know that would satisfy maybe for other people, it may be an excitement to be able to see you're down at the depths of, I don't know how many thousands of feet, to be able to get down and see something of the Titanic. And I'm like, I think the anxiety would just kind of kill me just being in that little, kind of like the way I feel when I go to these theme parks is because I'm there and I'm having to wait and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that I can't get on that ride.
Yeah.
Like, and it could be, even with the Fast Pass sometimes, I feel like, well, what did I pay for this for? If I'm not able to get in front of the line. So sometimes it's not always that easy. It's not, the thought of it being out there is great because, I'm going to Disneyland, the trip up there, everything up until that point, everything's good. But once I get in there, like, I feel like frustrated. I don't know why. It just feels like, damn, this is what I came to see. It just didn't quite.
But what if you were one of 10 people to get into Disneyland?
Well,
You get to ride that one ride that may kill you.
Well, that'd be a different story, right?
If we have any psychiatrist callers out there, Jose could probably use a good conversation. Something happened at Disneyland that really triggered this man. No, but I'll let you guys in on something. So when the movie came out, 97 or something like that, 96.
Yep.
Something like 98, 96, right in that time. And when I watched that movie, I was a kid, like 10 years old or something. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of this Titanic and the story of it. Obviously, the story is a little bit fabricated. At the time, I don't think I was paying attention to the love story so much, but it was more like the concept of like something so grand and like the people's excitement when they saw this and how big it looked and and then just like how this big thing just moved across the water, and stayed afloat, and then then boom, it like crashes on its first tour, right? I mean that story just seemed as devastating as it is. It's just a really beautiful story. And I think that's why a lot of people gravitate towards it, and so for me, I have this like emotional attachment to Titanic, right? And I've always kind of I had the 3D puzzle as a kid that I built of the, and so if I want a trip or something like that, I would probably be very nervous and scared, and I'd have to train myself to not be claustrophobic. Like I'd have to sit in a little like basket in the dark for like 10 hours, just to prep for it. But I would certainly assume that, if this big company with these big, rich people and they've done it before, I'm gonna have the coolest stories. I'm gonna be able to say, yeah, I've been down there. I've been 5 feet away from the Titanic. I've seen it, at its gravesite. And so for me, that's why, unfortunately, I would have imploded along with those individuals because of that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. But this is a good segue into what we were talking about a little bit earlier regarding like the financial stability of our country, what direction we're headed into, right? And it's a good segue into that because we're talking about, people, what they do with their money, right? And we've talked about this before, Jose. When you're a billionaire, you have access to all this stuff. You want to do more, and you want to do more rare stuff, more unique stuff, right? You want to be able to say, I've traveled the depths of here, and I've been to this, and I've seen this happen here, and so. But when we scale that down to the average folks, we want the steak and lobster, that right there, that little decision, that's nothing to a billionaire, but for the average folk could really, you know, you get enough of those lobster dinners, you know, all of a sudden your bank account's starting to dwindle down. And with the nature of economy, how does that affect you, right? So there's that transition.
I think that's a good segue because it is it's going to the depths of what, like you said, the debt, right? And just recently increasing that debt ceiling, you know, there's a lot of, how would I say, people are starting to get themselves into a lot more debt, and we see it in our world, right? We kind of see what's kind of shaping, you know, during the 2021. I think we had some of the best years in the mortgage industry, real estate, because people were able to refinance. And this is refinance to the lowest rates recorded, right? Anywhere from a 1.75 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage to, you know, 3.5%. So everybody that had a mortgage out there that had anything above a 5 or 6% was certainly taking advantage of the fact that they could refinance. And during that time, there wasn't really planning into saying, well, in 2-3 years from now, I want to set aside money. Since I have the opportunity of getting this cheap money, let me pull out $100,000 so that I can get that cheap money and hopefully utilize it in some fashion that I can enhance my property value or do something different. At that moment, I think the thought that came through is this is gonna run on forever, like we always do. That's the tendencies that we have when we're conditioned to believe that, and that's why you see a lot of people that lose money in the stock and what have you. Because again, you're buying at a time where you're almost you're doing it through emotion, right? And emotions have a lot to do with how we behave. So I think through this period of time, you saw people refinance without thinking of the future. Now, Come today, you're looking at rates of above 7%, and people are saying, well, shit, I don't want to refinance my house. But there are equity lines, right? Because you have the majority of your mortgage is stationed in a very fixed, low mortgage. And why would you want to do that? So now you're starting to see people want to say, well, I need money. Now that the dust has settled, and there's no more money coming in from the stimulus checks, or I mean even stimulating the economy through business PPE loans and doing all these things that definitely they flooded the market with money. People got an opportunity, and we saw that. We saw that in business. We saw that in any type of activity that went out there. We saw businesses get affected by this, some in a negative way, but a good part of the economy showed that it was receptive to that money and bought cars, bought homes, which is good. But now that the money's settled in, now that everything's settled now, and your expenses, like you said, the lobster dinner, I mean, now it's more of a debt. Well, I need to, how do you pay for it? Well, here's my credit card. Here's my credit card. How do you pay for that credit card? I don't know. But I mean,
minimum payments at a time.
Yeah, minimum payments at a time. But it continues to increase until finally you get to a point where you realize, well, shit, I need to pull money. And that's where your tough decisions will come. I have a 2%, or I can get a 6%, but I can get $100,000 to be able to satisfy the rest of the debt or at least pay for the rest of the debt that I have. And that's the hardest part. That is what I see in a lot of the American people that, I mean, I'm not going to say all people, but it's hard because a good majority of them are go through this because it's hard to make end to end at the end of the month to make that paycheck really last. Without really, we're conditioned to be consumers. We love the steak and lobster. We love the Disneyland. We love all these things. It's hard not to do it when you have a limited fixed amount of income. So that's kind of the way I look at this. And a segue to that, I'm just saying, are we too deep now?
But I mean, isn't it? I think it was like Trump that was talking about how like bankruptcy was one of the best institutions that we have as an American. Is that rack up the debt and do what you want to do, and then when it hits, just go bankrupt, wipe it clean. Yeah, you're kind of hit for a few years, but then you can start over and you can do it again. So, you know, do you think that's going to be a viable outcome? Are they going to do like 2008 and start saying, hey, Jose, just walk away from your house. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you, you know?
I mean, I like that, but there's energy. The amount of energy is the same. You just transfer that. So somebody has to be responsible for that. I mean, let's just say, for example, let's say half of Americans went through bankruptcy. I mean, oh yeah, everything's good. You can't not expect that there is any ripple effects with that. There is. And whether it's institutions, businesses that lose out money have to write off. I'm sure it doesn't work out in the way you think it does. It's kind of way because now in a digital world where it's about adding digits here and taking digits away from here to the Fed and Treasury and all that. I mean, you would think that, hey, we're good, but essentially, I mean, everything, you have to balance everything out. And I think that if 50% of the Americans went through that, there's going to be some devastating issues when it comes to our budgeting and finance, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an easy way. But look who you're talking about, Donald Trump, that's done it probably 5 or 6 times. The average American probably gets away with it once, maybe twice. But shit, if we all did with Donald Trump, then I think we'd be all in good shape, right?
President.
Yeah, we'd be run for president. But
A lot of celebrities take that route. 50 Cent has taken that route, and he's laughing about it. It's, I'm good now. I recovered. But yeah, that's them.
But I mean, doesn't it? I see, that's the thing. Is you say it's bad for these institutions, but doesn't it also now make these institutions, responsible for their reckless behavior of giving these loans out and, doing what we did in 2008, which is everybody's approved and everybody gets a home instead of saying you can't have one.
those institutions are no longer there. So back in 2008, Fannie
They
and
changed names. They're still there.
Well, they're there, but look, Fannie and Freddie were considered government-sponsored enterprises, and the word government-sponsored just means that, hey, I'm going to back you at the end of the day, but it was private ownership, private interest that owned those. Well, guess what? That collapsed because of whatever you call it, whatever it is, ambition, greed, whatever the case may be. You accepted these loans, you created these loans, and at the end of the day, you couldn't pay the bill. So it's easier for you to walk away because you have someone sponsoring you. The government says, don't worry about it. We'll bail you out because you're too big to fail. So we took on all this debt. We absorbed it, not having it's a check and balance, not having the monies to be able, we just trusted that the American government had it. But now, again, back in 2008, you saw the flood of foreclosures that took place, a flood of foreclosures, and they started soon after the collapse. Where are those foreclosures today? Why is that not happening? So if you go back to 2019 when the pandemic hit, or in 2020, guess what the government did? Says, well, we're not going to go through this again. Instead, let's modify. Let's do deferment. Let's do forbearance. And do something with your lender so that you don't do that. So what happened here was to start a clean slate again. That it taught people. I was part of it. It certainly shocked me. I didn't want to go through that again. So yeah, it certainly changed my behavior. But if the government's saying now, don't worry about it, you're fine. Get your loan. If you run into issues, we'll find a solution for you, whether through modification, forbearance, deferment. So therefore, now you're starting to shape people and condition them that, hey, it's okay. It's okay. But you and I, or maybe me, that I'm finally, I'm trying to get my feet together. I want to do everything right. Don't matter. It don't matter. They're not going to incentivize me. So it's good. Go out there, get a mortgage. Get in debt, because if you can't pay it, Uncle Sam will be there to bail you out.
Yeah.
And I will say for anybody who does feel very confident with their finances right now, invest in real estate, buy homes, buy rental properties. I think apartment complexes and rental homes, I think that's going to be that's going to be boom, a big boom. I mean, it's booming right now for those individuals who have rental properties. They're renting them out for twice as much as they were 3-4 years ago when they bought them, right? And so, but why? Well, because when you look at somebody who gets backed up against the wall, right? In 2008, 2009, you're backed up against the wall. Well, I have this home, but it wasn't worth anything, right? It was worth less than you owed. So you're upside down, and so there was no escape. Now, people have equity in those homes, right? So they're less likely to foreclose on them because it's like, well, I'm not going to foreclose and sacrifice $100,000, right? I have $50,000 to $100,000. Actually, that's the answer to all my prayers, right? Because that's about how much debt that I might have accrued, right? So you know what? Let's bite the bullet. Let's sell the house, pull out the $50K in equity. We'll rent an apartment. We'll rent a home. And guess what? We have more money in our bank account than we ever have before, right? Yeah, we kind of got to go through the whole social, get our egos out of the way. And yeah, we, sold our house and now we're living in an apartment or whatever the case may be. But that's a lot better of a situation than the folks back in the housing crisis when they lost everything, had nothing, nothing in their bank account now, and now they're trying to pick up the pieces, right? So I think you have that generation kind of coddling this new current generation and saying, just sell the house, man. Man, you could do so much more, or you just sell the house and, wait 6 months, build up your credit, pay off all your debt, and then go buy another one. If home ownership is really important to you, right? But that equity in the home that still exists, I think is super powerful. It'll prevent a lot of the bankruptcies. It'll prevent a lot of the foreclosures because you got extra time now. Banks are saying, hey, we'll defer it. Hey, you want to sell your house? Cool. We'll give you, 6 months deferred payments, but we got to show that your house is listed, right? Or that you're actively trying to sell it. So those actions are in place. But so that's just kind of, here's going to be my sales pitch, because this is what we do for a living, right? There's a lot of security in home ownership right now because it gives you options. You can leverage the equity in your home. You could leverage that piece of property to really get yourself out of some sticky binds. Who knows what's to come, right? Like we talked about, all of this COVID money, as it starts to expire. You start seeing houses that you wouldn't expect to see listed. They're listed now, right? Well, and they're selling, right? And that's kind of that mentality. There's a lot of equity in it. Let me just pull the equity out, sit back. If something does happen, I'm ready with my cash dollars, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, and when it comes to the rental market, I think people are starting to figure out, well, is it time to buy? Is the investor out there seeking these properties, knowing that the interest rate is high as it is? Obviously now I have to buy this $350,000 home, and as an investor, I'm paying a little bit more money, maybe 8-9%, because these are the pricing adjustments that they make to them, and I'm renting it for just slightly under that. Because you have to look at that. That's what you have to really pencil out. Does it pencil out for me? Mm-hmm. But yet the Fed is paying me 5% with money that you brought this a good point with Robinhood. Mm-hmm. Now Treasury bonds are paying close to 5%. If you're not seeing a capitalization rate for any investment of more than 4 to 5%, then you're better off putting your money in a safe place where the government, again, has history of guaranteeing you that payment. Yeah. They may be short Treasury notes, but your government's safe for now until things are able to make waves for real estate to say, you know what, it's worth me going out there and buying this 10-unit apartment complex because it makes sense. The return on that investment is there. Mm-hmm. You'll build the equity, yes, and that's how you build the wealth, but it has to make sense. And in many cases, you see people that are renting, and they may be renting for $1,000 or $1,200, but that's it. Mm-hmm. To that extent of $1,200, that's it. No more additional payments. If they have a problem with the unit, they just go to the landlord. That's the landlord responsibility. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to because sometimes it may be better to sit there than coming out here and paying $2,000, and that's just the beginning. And then you have all these other upgrades you want to do, and then you have everything else you have to do because now you're responsible for that. And sometimes that's the hard lesson that people will learn, that a home isn't just a $1,200 payment or a $2,000. It's more than that. It's a lot more, and that's where I feel that anyone that's looking to purchase a home should have some entry level of understanding home ownership and what it takes to get there. And I didn't do this, by the way. I've learned it the hard way, but I didn't do this. But I know that people that do go through a home ownership course understand the principles of credit, understand the principles of budgeting, and it really helps them and puts them in a better place. So when they go buy this home, they're in a lot better place than they would before. Mm-hmm. Because the first thing people want, it's just something that we're conditioned to believe, that buying a home is the American dream. It's the way to do things, right? And yes, for many of us it is, because we want to give our kids, we want to give our families the space of saying that, look at the backyard, look at this and look at that, right? But there's responsibility with that. And many folks, they have no problem doing that. But there's others that just barely scratch the surface, and it's when they get into that, it just becomes a burden more than it does a benefit. Mm-hmm. The equity, you're fighting to survive for that, but mostly you're using it as an ATM. I need it because I can't keep up with the payments. I can't keep up with the continued debts. I just got a new car. I just got this. Again, there is no foundational principles of how to finance and budget. And I think it's important for people to start here so that you end up being very successful. And at the end of the day, you cherish the benefits of being a homeowner, mm-hmm. the equity that you can pass down. And this is where the transfer of wealth comes into play. Too many of the times, people that are on the lower income brackets, they don't get to experience that because the equity on this side of town same house, isn't as good as the equity on this house. And you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And these folks, more affluent, they make it easier for them to transfer that wealth, and it makes it so much easier.
So almost that should be a mandated topic taught in high school.
I think so.
It's
I
almost
really do.
kind of mad.
Like I said, I learned the hard way. After 22 years in this business, I think I've learned the hard way that, yes, early on, that was my first thing. I got married. I wanted to buy a house. I thought that, hey, investment, passive income, all that stuff was in my head. I just didn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt that if I obtained a home, everything would work its way out. Well, I found out that I got myself into a money pit of a home that I purchased for 40 grand. It's a HUD REO. I thought I was going to be, this is my deal. And the money that I poured into it to try to fix it, to try to keep it, and I had to sell it. And I made very little money at the end of the day. And maybe, again, it's because I didn't have the knowledge, the how-to. There's people out there that can tell you with all these social media platforms that they know there's a formula you want to do. There's something you want to look at, capitalization rate. You want to look at all these things. Great. I'm just saying I didn't know. And I think that really, but it's a good experience for me. I had to learn that.
Yeah.
And essentially, it happened again. I bought another house thinking that I was, believe me, shame on me, right? I didn't learn the first time, but I think after a while, had I known this and someone would sit there, look, before you do that, go through this process, understand what budget is, understand what finances, understand this, understand taxes, responsibilities, understand that, frankly, if you don't pay your taxes, everything's incorporated in your payment now. But there's still so much more responsibility that goes with that home, upkeeping that home.
Yeah.
Well, I had a couple comments through your piece right there, but I would say we had the financial advisor on, not too long ago, and it's like, at what point of income, should you probably seek an advisor, because is it, $200,000 a year of income, 300, because you start making that type of money, you start making those type of decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to flip this house. I want to, try to do this. And sometimes, just like any business, you don't have to know every in and out of the business, but you have to have people on your side that do, right? Mm-hmm. So hiring a CPA may help you, right? But then it's, talk about scratching the surface. Sometimes we just got enough to do the project ourselves, but you got to understand you're doing it with, kind of blind, right? You're doing it without the support. So, account for that as well. Account for the people, the consulting that you're going to have to bring in to complete that project, not just the project itself, right? Yeah. So, I think there's tools out there that can certainly help that. But ultimately, if this conversation started early, in high school, that 18-year-old coming out who is going to get a job in the trades and start making $40 an hour and start making $70,000-$80,000 a year because he's working all this overtime and that'll probably go up 15% every single year because that's the nature of trades in California. They're going to be ready for home ownership really quick, right? Yeah. So the conversation should start really quickly. To your point. So
and I mean, and I have home ownership. That's what we base our living off of, is home ownership, right? We want to make sure that people that are buying homes, and Abel will tell you, when we have these conversations with people, it's more so we want to be that person that gives you that excitement of being a homeowner and remembering that name, because it helps. I mean, it's like anything else, but if you do it with these folks, and then it'll continue. It'll always provide you the fruits of that labor that you did to try to help people to get there. But too many of the times, it's hard not to. You see it. The experience that you do. Sometimes people just do it for the wrong reasons. Others do it obviously for the right reasons. The majority of people want to buy homes because they have a desire to be a homeowner, and that's great. We all do. That's great. And I just too many of the times. I won't say too many, and in many cases you'll see, well, let me retract that, I'd say many. In some cases you'll see where people it's hard for them. It's hard for them, and that's what kind of breaks my heart, especially in a situation like now, because rents are high, everything's high. Well, I'm being pushed out to be a homeowner. And frankly, am I ready to be a homeowner? Am I ready to be?
But that I think that's part of your financial responsibility to invest somewhere. And if you're not going to buy a home, you're certainly not going to invest in stocks, or know how to invest anywhere else, because home ownership is one of the most, I think, tangible forms of investing, right? You get something that you see, touch, and live, literally shelters you every single day in exchange for your investment, and so because of that, I think that's why, as people, we're susceptible to what our influences around us tell us to do, right? And everybody's going to agree, yeah, you need a roof over your head, you need a house for your family, so you're constantly encouraged. If everybody had that same encouragement with investing in in investment accounts, then everybody would do that as well, right? But this is, hey, you're going to have to spend money anyway. You're gonna, rent's gonna cost you $1,500 anyway. Either you're gonna make that landlord rich and you're never gonna see a penny of that, or you figure out how to add $1,000 to that that $1,500, and now you have your own home. Now you're growing equity, and now when you pass away, you're gonna be able to leave your family or the next generation with something and give them a huge head start in life. Because I'll tell you, my parents didn't get to start life with, $250,000, right? Their parents certainly didn't. And, and I haven't, maybe my grandchildren will, and that would be on me. That's my goal, is to, get them a head start, utilizing some of the equities on decisions that I make while, I'm still here and working and trying to be productive, right? But those are huge. That generational wealth, passing that down, that's how you can really do it, right? Is I'm going to invest for you, I'm going to work hard for you. But I think ultimately, like, we as people, and just for the average person, we get accustomed to a certain amount of monthly debt, and you see it all the time, right? For instance, my car was approaching, being paid off, and I was, I'm like 3 or 4 months away from paying off my car. It's not, what else are you gonna get? What are you gonna get? And it would make sense, because for me, it's like, well, yeah, I'm used to paying this bill. I've been doing it for 5 years, and so like I'm already groomed to paying this monthly payment. So why wouldn't I want something fresh and just keep going, right? But or you can say, wait a minute, like, well, what else can I do, right? Because we all know cars depreciate in value. There is no, unless you're buying a classic car that is super rare, but that's not anyone middle class's situation, right? So how could I apply that $500 somewhere else, and then maybe stretch myself and say, okay, well, you have an extra $500-600. Well, what if you doubled that? Now can you buy a $200,000 property and turn it into a rental and be cash flow positive? And yeah, you might not see instant returns on it, and I think that's the problem. People, we want to invest, and a month later we want the Bitcoin effect, right? We want the crypto effect, where I got doggy coin and now I sold it and I made all this money in just a few days. But if you were to sit on that investment, be disciplined, incorporate that into your budget. Well, now, rather than leaving your family $500,000 without selling your house, well, now you're retiring and you're living off that $500,000. You get to enjoy it, because then you have another $300,000 over here. Then that's for you guys, but this one's for me, right? And then you do that a few more times, and now all of a sudden, you have a lot more options, right? And you keep compounding all of those decisions into additional equities, additional cash flow, and you wonder, wow, how are these families so well off? Well, it was at some point, one of their ancestors decided to be disciplined and to apply their money into the right direction, right?
Yeah, and I think you said it best earlier, and you asked the question, at what point do you invest, right? And how much do you invest? In my opinion, I think you should invest in yourself by informing yourself, educating yourself, and seeking the advice of a professional, such as Abel or myself. And it's not just because of this show, but I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And then from that, I mean, you can kind of see if it makes sense. And a lot of the times, you already have it in your head that you want to do it, but just seek advice. That feeling or that thought is sitting with the peace of mind that, yes, if I go this route, here's what Abel said that I can gain from it. here's what Jose said I can gain from it. But as little as $20, I mean, people may say, well, how much income do you need? Well, as little as $20 compounded over a period of years at a 7% interest rate, if you continue to put that, it'll be a lot of money. It's just that, like you said, we want to see the effect like we want to see like overnight. We want to see that effect. And I'm like that. I'm very like impatient sometimes. I want to see that money grow like that. But you learn that essentially things do take time, and there are going to be those one-offs, and you see it all the time in the platforms. Do it like I did it. I'm only 23 years old and I'm a millionaire. Yeah, well, yay, good for you. You invested at the right time. You hit it right, right? But for the majority of people, that's not the case. And too many times, it's these platforms that'll get people enticed to go out and put money into something they have no clue of what's going to happen other than you're just handing money over to somebody else. Remember, money is never really lost. It's transferred. So whenever you put money here and you don't see a return, it's probably transferred to someone that's very active trader throughout the whole deal, or a seller, or someone that has a lot of money in it. But not knowing, not educating yourself. The investment that you can do is educate yourself. Learn what you're investing in. Seek the returns. That'll be there. And I think when we brought the financial advisor, I think that's what he said. As little as $20 can really go a long ways. Set aside for that rainy day. If you're depending on retirement someday in the future, Social Security may not be there. That's a battle that's happening today with this whole debt ceiling government shutdown, is because they wanted to make concessions about, one, Medicare, two, Social Security, which are your biggest drains on the budget. And at some point, those discussions have to be had. You have to have those discussions. But that could affect your Social Security, and your Social Security. And if that's all you're depending on, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So take that step of making that investment, again, educating yourself, seeking advice, or putting aside those $20 into some investment that's going to gain for you something in the future. Maybe not overnight, but essentially over the next 10, 15 years, you'll see that grow. Rohi, what do you think? I mean, you're
good.
You're a wealthy man. You understand.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree. I mean, and that's the thing is I they keep saying that the generation is these cash stuffers, and it's good. I mean, it's good that people are saving. I don't know that they're putting it in something that's got a return yet. They're just simply setting it aside because your bank accounts are getting still 0% interest. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, like I said, I would love to see more people take advantage of like what Robinhood or Apple, whoever these. Interest rates are 4.65 now. I mean, it's a good chunk of money that I wasn't getting before. So, is it worth putting that money into a home? No. I mean, it is smaller amounts, but I think for people to have trust in the bank right now is pretty tough. If you talk to people and say, hey, leave your $1,000 or whatever you got set aside for maybe you're buying a car or a home later on. Leave it in the bank and let it accumulate interest. They don't want to. They still rather have it under the mattress. So
Yeah.
I don't know when that's going to change.
Well, I mean, you see a lot of people coming into your business, right? And a lot of them, because of financial situations, they may want to come in and what is it, consignment? What do you call
consignment.
Yeah. Consignment, right? And can you explain that? How does that work? And
And consignment. Honestly, that was the COVID boom. I mean, people saying, I had a $500 gun and now it's worth $1,000, and we put it up for sale for them and we get it sold. It's a longer process. What you're seeing now over the last couple of months is I need the money now.
Okay, so it's more like they're coming in, they're using it as a
pawn shop.
No, it really is. I mean, it is.
Because
because we try to explain to them, like, yeah, I mean, like anything, if you allow the process, which is a 30-day process, you'll get more money. Like, no, I got to make a payment tomorrow. I got to make. So it's like, okay, well, you're going to take that hit. Okay.
So you're seeing more of that
Correct.
than you are the consignment, right?
Correct,
You're starting to see more people saying, hey, I need to pawn this
Mm-hmm.
because I need the money today.
Correct.
And a lot of it could be just for the necessities of food,
Yeah.
housing, or whatever the thing that they may
I
need.
mean,
right?
here that a bill came up, they gotta pay it. And I mean, to me, unexpected bills are maybe medical or maybe a car, broken down or something kind of thing. But that's kind of that panic that is a little more scary because it's like I need it now. I need the cash in hand.
That's a good. That kind of reminds me. Talking about housing, right? And a lot of it, clients and friends and family, they'll say, man, I'm waiting for those foreclosures. I'm waiting for those opportunities to occur, right?
Yeah.
and I say, well, how much money you have ready to put down? Well, I can do 10,000, 5,000.
Yes.
So, okay, well, you're not in the arena right now, right? And so here's what 2008 also taught us. It taught us that when those opportunities do exist, when hardships start to occur, people will make those type of decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And if they can walk away, they bought the gun for $450, 2-3 years ago. Today, I'm willing to give them $600. That's a good deal, mm-hmm. especially when the payment that they need to sustain is $600. Mm-hmm. That's a dang good deal, right? Where else am I going to get this money? Even though they could probably get it, wait a few months, like you said, or wait 30 days and get an extra couple $100. That couple $100 is like of no value, right? And so what I'm getting at is housing is very similar to that. You see signs that say we buy homes for cash. Mm-hmm. We'll pay cash for your home. Those are LLCs and of investors mm-hmm. that are ready to help you out of your financial situation. Your house looks like crap. Mm-hmm. It's deteriorating. You don't have any money to fix it. Nobody's going to be able to finance that. I'll give you $200,000 today. But my house is worth, $275,000. I understand that. Yeah. But here's cash money right now.
Which I like to challenge that. I've always asked them when they call me, I say, are you going to bring me a suitcase of cash? Yeah. And they say no. So then that's a false offer. Yeah. It's cash. You said cash.
That's right.
$100 bills.
Yeah.
Well, I want to sue them.
You get a wire. So, but the thing is those there's people that are ready to go do that, and they might have a room full of investors who everybody threw in $50,000, and mm-hmm. that's where the money's coming from. So they do have cash or digital coins, whatever you want to call it. They do have the money to pay you out with a 7-day escrow. You have your money, right? And so in a community like Madera, if you would, right, for all you Madarians that are listening, we have a lot of homes, on the east side of Madera that maybe were in your family for generations and aren't nowhere near up to FHA standards or VA standards. So you're going to have a lot of trouble selling those homes, right?
Yeah.
And so you see the next generation who inherits those, they say, man, this is kind of a rough neighborhood. The house is in really bad shape. I just inherited this house. I don't have the money to fix it up, right? Like, what am I going to do with this? They never had the money anyway. You got somebody come in and says, well, here's, $200,000. What? You can have it to me in 7 days? An advisor might say, well, hey, you could get 300 if you just, put 10,000 into it. I don't have 10,000. Mm-hmm. I want this 200, right? And so that's where you start seeing deals in real estate, right? Just like you start seeing deals in a gun shop, it's universal. It translates everywhere. Mm-hmm. But you got to know that those opportunities are for people who are literally building businesses to capture those types of things. Yeah. So if you think you're just an individual who wakes up one day and says, I want to buy a house, I want to restore it, I have an uncle who does cement, I have an uncle who does framing, we could fix it up ourselves. Well, unless you have that $200,000 to make that offer, you're not going to win those, mm-hmm. right? Unless you have people phone banking, door knocking, saying, hey, I noticed your house, I'd like to offer you a cash offer for it, right? There's literally people doing that, seeking those opportunities. So very difficult, by the way, if that's what you're watching and saying, I'm just waiting for that right opportunity. Probably not going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you see a house go down in sales price, $5,000 or $10,000, that's your deal. That's the deal that's for you, because you're going to come in with financing and you're going to save $5,000 or $10,000. You could probably get some seller credit from that. It'll save your cash to close, and you just purchase a home. That's the deal for you. It's not these other high end deals.
And I think that's a good point, because many folks look at foreclosure and they don't know what the definition of foreclosure is. When it comes to like investors and or just the general public looking for a foreclosure. Many times I get people calling me and they'll say, hey, I'm looking for a foreclosure. Okay, so kind of like you. Do you have a good chunk of money put down? So I think what they're looking for is they see judicial foreclosures, which mm-hmm. is a little different, right? So again, this goes back to kind of getting that information. Typical foreclosure, if I had a home and I can't make the payments, I default, then it goes to what they call a preliminary foreclosure. With the proper word is there's a foreclosure proceeding already. There's up like 3-4 months before it does, because they're going to give you some defaults. They're going to give you some time, and after that, they have to go through the process of foreclosure. Once that happens, the bank then assumes the property because they're the trustees, and then they go ahead and get that. And a lot of times they'll assign it back to a real estate agent. Oh yeah, this was a foreclosed property, but it's now back in the market. Mm-hmm. It's in the market, meaning that it's now comparable to other values of other homes around the area. Now, and in many cases, like what happened in 2008, was that these foreclosures were coming in, like a flood of them were coming in, and you couldn't sell them fast enough. You couldn't put them in the market. So what would happen? You would do judicial foreclosures. You take it out to the courthouse and say, the highest bidder will buy this home. Mm-hmm. Now there lies where if you do have cash and you have it set, then you would be able to scoop up those homes for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And that did happen. And in many cases, that's the confusion that I get from people, is that they think they're buying a judicial foreclosure. And those typically are cash. Mm-hmm. You have to have a cashier's check, or you have to have a way of paying that within that time when you make that bid. You have to have that vetted out through that process, and it's not a financing. You can't come to me to finance one of those. So you wouldn't be able to say, well, I'm going to go to the bank, get a loan for $100,000 so that I can make a bid on that home. Mm-hmm. That's not the way that works. And that's the difference between a judicial foreclosure and your standard foreclosure. A bank will put it right back in the market and sell it for. Yes, it was a foreclosed home, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get that cheap price like you would at a judicial foreclosure when you pay cash for it. Mm-hmm. Now, there are other venues like Abel had talked about, where you have a group of investors that'll pay cash for it. Yeah, that's the other alternative way, but you have to be ready, like he said, to be one of those cash buyers. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, that's not possible. What we see is, like, when you do see a reduction in price, like Abel says, that's a good opportunity for you not only to take advantage of the reduction in price, but possibly incentives from the seller saying, hey, I'm willing to pay you and incentivize you an additional $5,000-$10,000 to help you with your closing costs to get into this home. And that may work out better than you trying to buy this judicial foreclosure, because you need to come up with cash. I think it's important for people to understand the terms sometimes that we use, and foreclosures becomes one of them. I get that constantly. Hey, I saw a foreclosure, okay? Where did you see that foreclosure? Well, it's listed, okay? Is it listed by an agent? Yeah, but it's a foreclosure. Okay, then it's probably going to sell for the market value. Yeah.
Good stuff, guys. Well, any final comments?
I think we've studied the depths of both the Titanic and the credit crunch.
The depths of the sea.
The sea and the credit crunch, right? But overall, again, seek for advice. I mean, if you're looking to buy any guns and ammo, seek for a professional right here. This is Mr. Roy Sakurai. You're seeking for any mortgage advice, come and see Abel and myself.
All right, that's going to sum it up here. This is the Weekly Jargon. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and we'll see you next week. Take care.